So are you ready for rapid fire?
Baby, I'm always ready for rapid fire. I even busted out the IB hoodie today. After I got home, I was a little confined in the dress clothes. So I'm like, rapid fire, let's go. Let's ice out today.
Time to do it. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame will wear green jerseys for the Ohio State game this season.
It's about time that they picked a game with significance for the green jerseys. That's what I say to that. I think it's, number one, I think it's pretty ballsy because of all the crap that they get for the green jerseys. Because people still are under the impression that the green jerseys are bad luck, by the way. And they haven't lost in the green jerseys in quite a while, but they always play crap teams. So the last time I think a significant game was played in the green jerseys was when they had the throwback to the 1977 jerseys against USC and got smoke showed in our boys' one and only start at quarterback.
That's right.
And it was bad. It was really bad. But I think that's the last time they played a significant team in the green jerseys. So
I think you're right.
Touche to Marcus Freeman for, I'm assuming it was him. Touche to him for pulling him out for a huge game. Huge. I mean, it's the biggest home game of the year. I love it.
And I like the way, and I've said before, this is the way you do it. Like you're not announcing it the week before the game.
Yes.
You're not announcing it. You're not running out of the tunnel and now you've got green jerseys on after you warmed up in blue. You're announcing it months in advance. Yep. Everyone knows you're going to do it. This is going to be a special game. You know it's going to be prime time. And I'm sure that has something to do with it as well, because there'll be a lot of recruits there.
Yep.
There'll be more recruits and more people watching on TV. But you're doing it in advance. You're not making it like it's like, ooh, this extra special thing. You're right. You're doing it for a significant opponent, and you're letting everybody know in advance, this is what's going to happen. You wear green, we're going to wear green, the whole thing. I think it's awesome.
And I will also say they've done it so far in advance that I'm hoping that the green uniforms are going to get a little bit of a little spruce up, a little redesign, if you will. So I'm hoping, because
let's hope so.
Did you see on Twitter, the Notre Dame football, I believe it was the football team Twitter, they put out 3 different types of green jerseys and you could put your name and your number.
Oh, right. I did see that.
So that leads me to believe that maybe they're going to switch it up, because they had green jerseys with white numbers, green jerseys with gold numbers, and then the green jerseys with the blue. So does that mean we're looking at maybe a little bit of a switch up here? I'm hoping.
I hope so. I'm not a fan of the green with the blue numbers.
I know. Myself. Me neither. I mean, it's okay. I'd rather have gold, though, or white. Gold or white. Either one would be better than the blue.
White would look really crisp on the
It really jerseys. Would. And I hate to say this because I know it's sacrilege, but I would love the green jerseys with the white numbers and white pants.
That would actually look pretty cool as well.
Just saying.
Yeah.
That would be crisp.
It's hard to disagree with.
Yeah.
Okay. So I saw, as I mentioned earlier, your tweet about the movie Gladiator, which of course starred Russell Crowe as one-time Roman general turned gladiator Maximus. So my question is, who on the current Notre Dame football team would be their Maximus?
See, this is tough, because if this was last year, it would be Michael Mayer and it wouldn't be close. Because I could see him in the middle of Notre Dame Stadium being like, "Are you not entertained?" Like, that's totally him. That is him 100%.
Right.
With this year's squad, I'm just not sure. Like, I'm trying to think of like the big personality and who that would be, because you need some personality to be yelling at the fans, and to take control. The scene that I put out on Twitter was the end of the scene where they're supposed to lose and he gets everybody behind him and he becomes the general again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And so who is the guy? Like, you'd love to say Sam Hartman, because the quarterback is the general and you want everybody to follow him. I don't know Sam Hartman's personality well enough to say that he's Maximus. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Pretty laid back when we got to talk to him a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Seemed pretty laid back. Like Romlek is saying Botello. And like from a personality standpoint, I could see that. But part of Maximus is the leadership as well. And that's what, like, to me, the
Yeah.
one that stands out, maybe not, like that, like that very sharp personality, but when you throw in the leadership and just the position he plays, my guy, I think, would be JD Bertrand.
Okay.
That's who I would go with.
I
Like,
could see that.
renowned for his leadership. And again, I think he's got personality, not to the Michael Mayer extent, I don't
Right.
think, but I think guys would follow him into the Coliseum, like choose your sword and, your whatever, your fishnet or whatever it happens to be. So I would go with Bertrand.
Okay. This is a good one right here. Tommy Gunn says, personality-wise, I could see it being Jaden Mickey.
Yeah.
We all know that he's a talker, or at least the
Right.
most obvious talker on the team. So I could definitely see that.
But Maximus was a general, so again,
Right.
it's like
No,
the
I
leadership
agree.
was a big thing.
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I like the Audric Estime. Like, I like that one from a, just a physicality, just take your will away. Like, I love that idea. I'm going to need to see somebody just step up as a big time leader. JD uses the crown of his helmet. That's pretty funny, actually. And remember, they did kill somebody. He took off his helmet and just bashed him in the face. So,
husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered son. I shall have my vengeance in this life or the next.
Oh, that's well done. This is well done.
If you find yourself riding through a field, do not be alarmed. You are in Elysium. You are already dead. Good stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Did Tommy you just plowing through Gladiator quotes there a little bit ago?
Did you know that they're coming out with a Gladiator 2?
I saw that. I think I saw that in your tweet, and it's like, is Russell going to be in it, or is it going to be somebody else? Do we know?
They're from what I was able to find out, because it's been kind of tight-lipped. When I was able to find out, it sounds like they're going to kind of continue the storyline, but with, I think, the little boy that was
like now he's grown up or something. The kid,
the kid, the
from that scene that went out there.
Yes, but how can you have Gladiator 2 without Russell Crowe? Like, I realize he died at the end, but let's revisionist history, people. Bring him back.
It's like you're going on 25 years at this point now, aren't you?
It's true.
Since a kid, so it's not like you could do a prequel. It all have to be CGI types.
This is true.
You did that.
I mean, even 25 years later, Russell Crowe is still a bad A, and I think he could still do his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, he could be like the retired guy who was in charge of all the gladiators. He got his freedom. Like, he could play that kind of a role or something. Right. But he's gonna need to kick some ass in one of the scenes. But
Father David, I agree. Some sequels should never be made.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Stymie. By the way, History of the World Part 2. Jesse and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and Stymie's asking if History of the World Part 2 is worth watching. They did a series on Hulu. There've been some. I think I've watched maybe the first 3 episodes so far, and there's been some pretty good stuff. There's hits and misses. There's hits and misses, but they did a little spoof of Curb Your Enthusiasm on there. It was called Curb Your Judaism, but it's got the guy who plays Leon from, I don't know, do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm ever? The guy who plays Leon on there is in this, little thing. So
nice.
There's a lot of good comics in this show, and of course, Mel Brooks, wrote it and created it and all that stuff. So
hilarious.
I would recommend it. But here's another thing that happened today. Besides slicing a chunk out of my finger, 3 weeks ago, I got my bank card was hacked, and so I got like the security call. We shut it down, ordered a new card. It's been 3 weeks, and I still haven't got the new card. And I called them last week and I said, hey, we're going on 3 weeks. I haven't got the new card. And they said, well, it was mailed on the 28th. Well, I haven't got it. So I'm still waiting on a card. And so in the meantime, when they shut your card down, anything that you've got it connected to pay your bills.
Oh, brutal.
So I've got Hulu and my internet. My internet could be lost. It happens enough anyway in the middle of this show because I got emails today saying, hey, your card number's no good anymore. So I don't know.
As you're sitting waiting.
Yeah.
I promise I'm good for it.
3 weeks later. Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
Let me ask you this. Do you buy or sell Gladiator as a sports movie?
That's a buy. It's a huge buy. 100% buy. Because that was the sport of the time.
It's like the original sport.
Yes. Like the Coliseum was the original stadium.
That's
like
right.
That, absolutely 100%, no question about it, sports movie. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if I was going to have to argue with you.
Yeah,
this.
I couldn't. Because, like, I couldn't.
Because, like, to me, I was thinking about it. Like, it's got everything that most of your sports movies have. You know, it's got like the off-field strife. You know, you've got a love story and, you know, all the, you know, the drama going on, you know, just like Hoosiers, for example, with Coach Dale and the teacher and, you know, the stuff, you know, all that stuff going on. And like, there's actually more actual sport in Gladiator than there is in the movie Rudy. And
that's very true.
Like Rudy is 99% just the drama. You know, there's very little that you actually see taking place on the field.
There's a lot of slow-mo practicing, you know,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if Rudy's a sports movie, then The Gladiator is 100% a sports movie. And there's a ton that goes on because, you know, you could look at it as like a guy who starts out in the minors and works his way up to the major leagues.
Right.
Like, that's the Gladiator.
That's true. Because he kind of started off in the small gladiator pits, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they worked their way up to the, you know, to the Coliseum, which was the big time, the big show, if you will. And, you know, that's when he gained all of his fame.
Yep. All right. We've got some questions, comments from women's basketball, and I will post the comments and then we'll do the question. Anthony, I know the girls won yesterday, but that was horrendous shooting on their home floor. I hope they got their bad shooting game out of them with the win. And then where was the other one? ND Sailor. Why were the ND women so poor shooting yesterday? They won with defense and rebounding. So with that, Vince, I'll just throw this to you. Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame women's basketball win over Mississippi State was blank.
It's exciting. I mean, I watched it start to finish. Some of my family was there. My daughter and my son were at the game with the in-laws, cheering, getting all excited. My daughter caught some March Madness socks. She's all excited about that. And but no, it was an exciting game. And you're right. The shooting was bad, but it was bad on both sides. And they needed to, you know, it's just like anybody. When you can't shoot, you've got to do the other stuff. You got to be able to defend and you've got to be able to rebound. And Notre Dame set records for rebounding. I mean, they definitely rebounded the basketball.
Lauren Ebo, Maddie Westbeld, bringing it.
Yeah. They both had, 15, 16 plus rebounds. I mean, it was an impressive display of defense and rebounding. And that's what they needed to get themselves out of the field of 34 and into the Sweet 16.
What's funny is like everyone afterwards, I saw all the comments. Well, it wasn't pretty, but they won, or it was ugly, but they won. I didn't see it sitting there calling the game. I never saw it as an ugly game. I saw it as a very greatly competitive game, a very physical game. You can call it ugly if you want because of the lack of shooting, but I'll say this. I think something that we learned about Notre Dame yesterday was if you want to get into a boxing match with Lauren Ebo, you're going to lose. Yeah. And more importantly, if you want to get into a boxing match with Sonia Citron, you're going to lose because Sonia, she might have that, you know, facade where she doesn't change her expression very much, but she took him to town when it was time to take him to town. She was 2 for 12 from the field. But what did she do? She found a way to get to the free throw line at the end of the game when the game was on the line. Here's my biggest, you know, other than what I just said, my biggest takeaway is Sam Purcell, the Mississippi State head coach, and I don't know how much they talked about this on the TV broadcast. He was an assistant coach at Louisville for 9 years. And what happened 2+ weeks ago at the ACC tournament? Louisville cranked up its defense. They bodied up Notre Dame. They threw them off their game. They played them physical. Notre Dame was not able to respond. Well, do you think that Sam Purcell, 9 years on the Louisville staff, do you think he got the scouting report handed straight to him by Jeff Walz, the Louisville head coach? Of course he did. And so what did Mississippi State do? They tried to come out. They tried to body up on Notre Dame. They tried to be as physical with them as possible. And there was a lot of success in that. But who kept plugging away? Notre Dame kept plugging away. They didn't get beaten like they did against Louisville with the same game plan a couple of weeks ago. They battled through it and they found ways to win, despite the fact that, if you, like I said, if you want to say it wasn't the prettiest thing, but their players made plays. And again, Lauren Ebo, 18 rebounds, the most in program history in an NCAA tournament game. Maddie Westbeld with 15 boards of her own. And then again, Citron, did she have a great shooting game? No, but they were just all over her physically the whole game. And again, when it was crunch time, she found ways to make plays and she hit the free throws, and they ended up walking out of there with a win against the same game plan that beat them a couple weeks earlier.
It was you actually said on the broadcast at one point that I think you said it reminded you of Louisville, or it wasn't quite as physical as Louisville, but it reminded you of that or something along those lines. I was like, yeah, that's a really good call, because it was like that. And it just felt like a heavyweight, just kind of a boxing match. It's like, okay, whoever's left standing is going to end up winning this thing. And it ended up being Notre Dame. It was just a really good game to watch. And, to Mississippi State's credit, they didn't play like an 11 seed.
No.
They didn't. They did not play like an 11. And
they beat the 6 seed Creighton handily
the
game before that. They had some confidence going into that game.
Yep, absolutely. No
and
doubt.
now they do. It's on to the Sweet 16, and they play Maryland, and that'll be a rematch. Decaf 18 says, that's just great. Hey, I like their chances, man. I like their chances, especially after coming through yesterday the way they came through. It should be a great game, and it'll be the second year in a row Notre Dame gets to the Sweet 16, and they'll have a rematch from the season. They played NC State in the Sweet 16 last year. They won in the regular season last year. They lost by a couple points in the Sweet 16. Maybe they flip the script on Maryland. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching.
Yep. All right, so T-Guns was asking if Sonia was the midseason enrollee freshman. No, that was Cass Prosper, and Prosper played some good defense out there.
Yeah, she really did.
Something else that impressed me, and I mentioned this in the post game. Cass Prosper and KK Bransford both picked up their second foul in the first quarter. They sat for the remainder of the first quarter, but then they came back, played most of the rest of the game, and didn't pick up another foul afterwards. And and we're still playing really good defense in a game that was called the way it was as well.
And they ran the floor really well too.
Yeah, Citron played all 40 minutes, I believe, yesterday as well.
There she needs to.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. It's blank that it is being reported that Mike Brey has interviewed at South Florida and is sounding like could be their top candidate for the men's basketball job there.
It sounds to me, let's see, it's blank. It sounds like a retirement gig. That's the blank. That's what it sounds like to me. He is going to go down there. He's never going to leave the state of Florida, and he's going to recruit the state of Florida. He's not going to go very far, and he's just going to, because it's okay to lose to South Florida. It's no big deal. He's just going to kick back, right out into the sunset while still getting paid. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, so. And I think that's a very fair assessment. His son and his grandkids, they live down there in Bradenton, which is just south of Tampa. It's like that's where the Pirates have their spring training. And it just seems like for him to be taking a job this quickly, it like when you look at Mike Brey, stepped down, retired, whatever you want to call it here at Notre Dame, it doesn't make it seem like that was probably the case to be jumping back in right away. He did some TV over the weekend, and when you look at the state this program is in right now, and it's like, okay, now you're going to go to Florida. And so what? Recruiting's going to be that much easier at USF. I realize it's Tampa and all that, but he's also going to be going into a situation where, like, at least going in, this is a program that has not been, I believe, to the NCAA tournament in 10 or 11 years, South Florida. And the women's program is pretty good right now. They've actually, so it's like, you're going to go into a situation where you're already second fiddle once again to the women's team. They've got a pretty good women's team down there.
Oh man.
And it just he was not wholeheartedly into the recruiting here at Notre Dame these last few years. That became very obvious. And so now you're going to go to where the sun is shining and you've got all these other things going on. And now you're going to be a better recruiter at South Florida.
Not a chance.
I have a hard time with that.
Not a chance. And I mean, it's funny because what was it? It was over the weekend where we're driving to Michigan City for the semi-state game. And I'm talking with my in-laws and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, Mike Brey's house is for sale. It's like, what? he's out of here no matter what. And my guess is he was going to go to Florida regardless. And like I said, I think he's going to take this job so he could still get paid to be down in Florida. Like
right.
It has become painfully obvious it was not his decision to leave Notre Dame. And it was still the right decision by Notre Dame. Because you're right, his recruiting has been lacking significantly over the last few years. I mean, it just has. I mean, if you look at the entire recruiting class was all South Bend guys, last year. And you got a South Bend guy this year. And I'm not saying those guys weren't good, but you're telling me they're the best that you could have gotten from the entire country? I have a hard time with that. You know what I mean? I have a hard time with that.
Chi-Town's asking if Brey is going to be involved in choosing his successor because it feels like a conflict of interest. I don't think he was ever going to be involved. He said those things, but especially, just like he's pretty much been gone. It sounds like, ever since. I don't think that was ever a thing. I think he kind of said that it may, maybe he volunteered that or whatever, but
I think it made him feel better.
I don't think so.
I think he said that to make himself feel better.
Right.
Because he thinks he's Roy Williams, or name your elite basketball coach that when they retire, or Duke, Krzyzewski at Duke, right? He was able to kind of handpick his successor. That wasn't going to happen here, and I think he wanted to kind of make it sound like it was to a degree.
Yeah. Will Carmody follow Brey since he has eligibility?
Maybe.
I know Brey likes him, and there's a lot to respect about Robbie Carmody, but my gosh, the guy's just never stayed healthy. I mean, he could. I know he's in the portal, but
sure,
I don't know.
Somebody will take Robbie Carmody. He's a good leader. He's a good kid. Somebody's gonna take a chance on him. Maybe it's South Florida, but I guess the question for me would be: does Robbie Carmody want to go play for Mike Brey again? That would be my question. I don't know the answer to that.
Decaf says he checked out months ago. I mean, you can make the argument that it was years ago, but the only thing I'd say in his defense is he thought he was going to have JJ Starling and Blake Wesley together this year. I think that he thought that Blake was going to make it for at least 2 years.
I'm sure he did think that.
And things look a lot different this year if you do still have Blake Wesley on this team.
Sure.
Now, you still are lacking in the post, which was the biggest fault of this team. They still needed more there, but for the last 5 years, they have, with the exception of Blake Wesley and a little bit with JJ Starling, there's been no athleticism out there on the floor, especially when you compare it to ACC teams, like good winning ACC teams.
The fact that he thought that Blake Wesley was going to be there for more than a year shows you how lazy he is in his recruiting, because he didn't do his homework. Meaning Mike Brey didn't do his homework on who this kid was and what he was going to be when he got to Notre Dame with the off the court stuff.
Right.
There was no way he was going to make it multiple years at Notre Dame in the classroom. There's just no way.
Yes.
And he'll be the first one to tell you that. It just wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen in high school. What made him think that it was going to change when he got to college? Like that, you got to do your homework, man. And he didn't. And that's lazy recruiting. You didn't do your homework.
It bit him. Yeah, Michael says if Blake went to class, he would have.
Right.
I don't think there are any lies there.
No.
Fill in the blank. First week in the NCAA tournament was blank.
It was exciting. I mean, it was bracket busting, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that. It was bracket busting. It was fun. I mean, it was exciting. I didn't really have a dog in the fight as far as like a team I was following. And so I wasn't like heartbroken or sitting on the edge of my seat, but I watched that entire Purdue game, that they lost. And I was on the edge of my seat watching it like, oh my gosh, they are going to lose this game. Like, there were so many of those kinds of games over the first 4 days. It was unbelievable.
11 different conferences represented in the Sweet 16.
Crazy.
And I think I've got, well, I'll save that for a second, but like, look at who's there. Florida Atlantic. UConn is back in the Sweet 16. San Diego State, Princeton, Xavier is there. Now, like, some of those teams are higher seeded teams. Like that Tobin Anderson, man, from Fairleigh Dickinson, that he was he was quite a character. I don't know how many of his interviews you saw. That guy's like a fast and like what's crazy about them is the fact that they didn't even win their conference tournament. Like,
right.
Like the fact that Merrimack is transitioning and Merrimack transitioning to Division I, they won the conference tournament. Fairleigh Dickinson got the big prize, even though they lost their conference championship game, and then they went out and beat Purdue. And that's I love the fact that that interview or the locker room speech about the more I watch Purdue, the more I think we can beat them. And like Matt Painter was pissed off about that. It's like, maybe you should take that to heart. Like speaking of guys who need to change their recruiting tact a little bit, and speaking of zero athleticism, like how did Purdue win the Big Ten and end up with the number 1 seed and look like that? They have no guards. Like their guards, like you could go to a high school down the street and find more athleticism than the guards Purdue has.
And they couldn't hit a shot. I mean, they couldn't hit a shot. I mean,
no.
And when you've got a guy like the Zach Eby or whatever down low, you've got to be able to hit outside, because every time he got the ball, he pretty much got triple and quadruple teamed. And they were just daring Purdue to hit outside. And they couldn't hit water in the ocean. I mean, it was embarrassing is what it was. And Zach Eby was the only weapon that they had. And, kudos to FDU for the way that, I mean, they just said, hey, we're not going to let this guy beat us. Anybody else, go for it. And they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So
did you see that FDU didn't have a band? And so the Dayton band came to Columbus and learned their fight song. And they were like, they were basically acting as Fairleigh Dickinson's band yesterday or the day before, whenever that was.
Well, and one of the women's teams in South Bend didn't have a band, and so one of the local high schools went and was their band. I think I saw on Twitter. Yeah. So, kudos to those guys for stepping up.
Here's one thing I noticed, just the way things were televised, and I saw that they set the first 2 days of the tournament set viewership records, like all-time viewership records for Thursday and Friday. The Thursday, Saturday, both the matchups and the announcer crews were much better than the Friday, Sunday announcers and actual matchups. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I did not.
It stood out to me. Like the games weren't quite as sexy, and the announcing crews were like they were all like the lower, because like you had, I think Ian Eagle was the only what I would call top, play-by-play guy working the Friday, Sunday games. But,
okay.
Because you had like Nance, you had Harlan, all those guys working the first day of the tournament. And the matchups are just a lot better. But Purdue lost to double-digit seeds 3 straight times now.
Crazy.
Virginia has lost to double-digit seeds 3 of the last 4 years. And Arizona has lost to double-digit seeds 4 of the last 5 years. Just amazing.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
But that's why this tournament is so great,
Yeah.
And you've got no blue bloods, none of the traditional blue bloods, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, none of those 4 in the Sweet 16 for just the 3rd time ever, I guess.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
And yes, Stymie trying to rub a little salt in the wound, as it were. How did Kansas do this weekend? And then, like the whole Eric Musselman with the shirt off, I could do without. But that was It was frustrating, obviously. It was frustrating watching them give up that lead. They gave up an 11-point lead. And then, actually, I'm sitting there doing the Notre Dame women's game yesterday, and I'm like, man, KU gave up the 11-point lead. Is that same thing going to happen here 2 days in a row? Fortunately, the women pulled it out. But my wife, we were watching because we're both, alums, and my wife was like, I hope all the good teams lose the rest of the weekend after Kansas lost. So, and of course, Kansas State, the rival, is in the Sweet 16. So, of course. How many Sweet 16 teams do you have left?
9. Wow. I have 9, which
is
a lot better than I thought.
This might be the worst bracket I've ever done. I think I've got 4. I've got UCLA, Alabama, Houston, and Texas. Those are the only 4 of the Sweet 16 that I picked. So there's a lot of red on my bracket as I'm looking at it right now. So, that's kind of embarrassing. But I have 9 Sweet 16, I have 5 Elite 8, and I have 3 Final 4 still alive. So, I've got an opportunity to not come in last is basically all it is for the group that I'm in. We had one at school with our little department. There's 6 of us. If the last person has to buy lunch for everybody. So the goal is just not to come in last. And I'm feeling fairly confident about my spot right now. I'm right in the middle, 3rd place. I'll stay right there, baby. All I know is if you end up being the one that's got to buy lunch, a lot of people are going to go hungry. So
it's Little Caesars for everybody.
That's right. That's true. You can buy a lot of pizza at Little Caesars. $15, you can feed a lot of people.
Oh, the guy who's in the lead, he's like, we're getting Ruth's Chris, right? I'm like, yeah, says the guy who's winning.
Yeah. I'll buy 1 steak and you guys can all split it.
I sent you my bracket before everything started, though. So
I know.
My bracket's legit. It's just not good.
Yeah. Well, that's the same with mine. Joey, do you like movies about gladiators? You ever been in a Turkish prison? Have you seen the movie Airplane, Vince?
A long time ago, but yes.
All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Don't forget Tariq Bracy. If you've got a few more people here watching live right now than at the start of the show, Tariq Bracy, former Irish cornerback, is going to join us at 6:00 on tomorrow's show. So be here for the live show tomorrow. Fill up the chat with questions for him. We will, choose the appropriate ones. Like I said, keep it clean, but you can ask some questions of Tariq tomorrow on the show. So looking forward to that. That's right. And then Wednesday, of course, got Marcus Freeman press conference and the start of spring football, and we'll have some Marcus Freeman comments on Wednesday's show as well. All right? Sound good?
Boom.
Ever seen a grown man naked? It's from Decaf 18, just to clarify. All right, we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.